A very warm good morning to one and all present here. We'll start our proceedings. We'll have, as starting of the program, we'll have a prayer. We'll have Jain Mahamantra, which will be followed by Tamil Taivaith. I'll be sharing the same.
Sir, unmute it. There is no voice.
I'm sorry, we are facing some technical problems, so we will go forward and we'll have the welcome address. Before we start, I request all the participants to, other than the speaker, to switch off your microphone and the video for the smooth conduct of the lecture. Now I request Professor K. Sumitra, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Agarchand Manmal Jain College, to welcome the gathering.
Good morning to one and all. I would like to welcome you all the ICPR Periodical Lecture Series 2021. Due to the pandemic situation, we are organizing the lectures in online platform. First of all, I like to welcome our principal, Dr. N. V. Venkataramanan, to the program. He will be delivering the presidential address today. Now, I would like to welcome today's speaker, Dr. Amit Valmiki, Associate Professor, Head, Department of Philosophy, RJ College of Arts, Science, Commerce, Mumbai. She will be delivering the lecture titled Cinematic Realism, Feminist Perspective. Dear ma'am, we wholeheartedly welcome you to the program. Now, I would like to welcome our Vice Principal, Dr. B. Mahavi, and all the heads and staff of different departments of Agarchand Manmal Jain College to this program. I would like to welcome our Secretary, Associate Secretary, and management members. I also welcome all the participants from different parts of the country. I also welcome all the students who are attending this program. Once again, I welcome one and all present here. Thank you.
Now I welcome our beloved HOD, Dr. S. Manikandan, to introduce the speaker.
Very warm good morning to one and all present here. It's a great pleasure to have you, Madam Amita Valmiki, Madam, and others on this platform today. It's a great honor to have you, Madam. And the ICPR lecture program, the periodical lecture program, we have been conducting this program right from the day when it has been started. This is the 6th series of ICPR periodical lecture program conducted by Department of Philosophy, at Agachan Manmul Jain College, Chennai, Meenambakam. And before I start my duty, I have a prima facie duty of introducing our department. The department was started way back in 1989. Almost 3 decades has passed, and I can assure you that all of our students are more successful in their walks of life. No one has failed because of philosophy. Everyone has succeeded in their life because of philosophy. I can say that. No one turned up to us and saying that because of philosophy I failed in my life. But most of the students who I meet, they say that it is because of the philosophy they are more successful in life, and they are more successful and more ethical in their walks of life. That is the glory of our department. The department has produced a lot of gold medalists from the University of Madras, and it has produced stalwarts and great scholars who are also great academicians. This is the brief thing, and the college is established in 1952, and our Jain community has been doing a tremendous job. All of our college, we have a strength of 7,000 students pursuing their degree. Nearly 90% of our students are first generation learners. Our college doesn't collect any donation. It's only the fees, the government nominated fees, around only few hundreds, and with this they get their degree. This is our brief introduction of our college and the department. The ICPR lecture program, the aim of ICPR lecture program is to promote philosophy among the young minds. That is the primary objective. And for this, the ICPR gives a small amount of a grant, and we have to, get the good scholars or scholars from across India, and share their experience about the philosophy. This we have been doing it for the past 5 years, and this is the 6th year, as I told you. This year, we are fortunate enough to have a series of speakers across India. Yesterday, we had L. Vijay, who spoke on Indian medical ethics. Today, we have Amita Valmiki madam, and Amita means unlimited, boundless. And when I saw her on camera the first time when she logged in, I can see the wisdom and the knowledge is so unbound. Along with Valmiki, definitely she is going to really today take the platform of our students, definitely. And I believe that the students might have learned from the yesterday's lecture and leave for today's lecture and hope for tomorrow's lecture. The important thing, students, what I'm suggesting is that the important thing is not to stop questioning. The questioning is the art of art of your intelligence. So I persuade all my students to question at the end of the program. Now my prima facie duty is to introduce Amita Valmiki madam. As I told you, Amita means limitless, boundless. Along with Valmiki, the author of Ramayana, definitely she is going to take us to the next level, I think so. She is an associate professor and head of the Department of Philosophy. Ramani Rajan, Jhunjhunwala College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Autonomous, affiliated to the University of Mumbai. She is also a visiting faculty of philosophy at the University of Mumbai, and she is a member in Board of Studies in Logic and Philosophy. And her PhD thesis was on man, religion, and society, with a special reference to mysticism. And today we have an international scholar, my dear students and the faculties. She has presented a lot of papers in conference, seminars, and both at national and international level. And one unique and specific quality of her is that she has been awarded twice a postdoctoral research fellowship at the International Center for Philosophy, Bonn University. And she has delivered a lecture at the Department of Philosophy, Religious theories at Bonn University, Germany. She has published books which is titled Mystical World, Social, Spiritual and Secular. And also she has co-edited a book titled 100 Years of Indian Cinema. Definitely, everyone will be, those students are not, whether they are interested in philosophy or not, but definitely they will be more interested to know more about cinema. Now, that is really luring our contemporary society now. Madam is authority in that, and let us listen to her. And she has published more than 55 articles in national and international conference. Her special area are ethics, theistic existentialism, philosophy of religion, mysticism, and philosophy of film. I only remember that Benjamin's quote. He says that, tell me, I forget. Teach me, I remember. Involve, I learn. I believe that Amita Valmiki Madam will involve us and we will all try to learn from her today. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Jyoti.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for giving such a gracious and such an elaborate introduction. I don't think so I deserve so much, but thank you so much. At the outset, respected principal of the Institute, Agurchand Manmal Jain College, Department of Philosophy, Head Department of Philosophy, Dr. S. Manikanandan, Department of Philosophy, Professor Prasanna, Professor R.C. Sinha, Chairman ICPR. I feel extremely honored by your invitation. Thank you so much. At the very outset, I'm going to try to present my views. Can you just have a first slide, please? Through cinematic realism, I'm going to expound three actually basic concepts: love, death, and femalehood. But since and it is some kind of even glorifying femalehood, and how important the gender, feminine gender, is in the films that I have taken, and they open up the layers of femalehood. So these are the three main protagonists of my paper: love, death, and femalehood. Therefore, I kept a short title saying cinematic realism, feministic perspective. More than feministic perspective or feministic philosophy, it is more about glorification of femalehood. Next slide, please. So at the very outset, again, I want to introduce why do we need to philosophize film? So film as an audiovisual art form has tremendous potentialities to fulfill certain basic aesthetic cravings of human beings. It reflects the socio-cultural, economic, political, philosophical, and psychological dimensions of the reality. It reflects an individual to see life and hatch the dormant aesthetic and arty side of the human existence. The most important aspect is it entertains while opening up the layers of one's psyche. Therefore, philosophizing film is quite intriguing and requires a specialized personnel to do it. Next slide, please. So what does it mean to theorize film? Next slide. Yeah. J. Dudley Andrews says that, what is film theory? What do we do in film theory? Film theorists make and verify propositions about film or some aspect of film. They do so for both practical and theoretical reasons. In the realm of practicality, film theory answers the questions asked by those engaged in making films. Film theory brings to light what filmmakers undoubtedly comprehend intuitively. He continues, film theory is more often studied as other arts and sciences for the sheer pleasure of knowing. Film can be film can, in fact, display philosophical concepts more clearly and definitely. In fact, if the real comes clearly through documentaries, the real with R capital, it reminds me very much of Ramanujacharya's Vishishta Advaita, where we all make the part, we are parts of the absolute, and the absolute is reflected in each part. In the same way, Bazin, the film critic and film theorist, he also talks the same thing. So in fact, if the real comes clearly through documentaries, the real with R capital comes more precisely through feature films. As said by Mary M. Leach, I quote her, film, like other forms of fictions, can never even make the transition to the philosophical thinking easier. A movie can be an effective tool for introducing a philosophic topic because it allows the viewers to drop many preconceived notions. We are all used to suspending our common sense views about how the world works in the context of fiction. The suspension can be used to the philosopher's advantage, unquote. Philosophy of film is more a branch of pure aesthetics, and pure aesthetics imbibes in itself, as Indian philosophy says, morality, purity, and beauty, Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram. Vittorio De Sica's Umberto D strongly propagated realism in film, and the concept of love not between two human beings, but between an animal, a dog, and a man, Mr. Umberto Domenico Ferrar, comes to the forefront, making a statement about paradigm of love. André Bazin claimed that cinema is reflection of reality. Though for Rudolf Arnheim, another film theorist who supports the silent era, talkies brought about death of film as an art form. Bazin is clear in his ideas about film as portraying realism. Though montage was the prime instrument in silent films, the use of it when I will tell you, Prasanna, to move. Though montage was the prime instrument in silent films, the use of it when produces realism can be accepted according to Bazin. In The Evolution of Language of Cinema, Bazin explains that montage, although necessary in many cases to make a film work, can be heavily overused. From the start, he makes a distinction between those directors who put their faith in the image and those who put their faith in reality. Next one. Love, death, and rebirth are the main protagonists of this paper, which becomes the intrinsic part of cinema in general. Says Jean-Luc Godard, I quote him, "A story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, but not necessarily in that order," unquote. As you can see, Sartre, it reminds me of Sartre also. He says, one is still what one is going to cease to be, and already what one is going to become. One live one's death and die one's life, unquote. Becomes very valid at this juncture. So is Bazin's statement. Cinema is, if taken as reflection of life, or reality with R small, or reality with R capital, it need not keep the order of birth, life, love, death, and rebirth in the chronological fashion. The order is reshuffled, and it is in reality to give you the wisdom that the mysteries of facts are stranger than absolute fiction. As Godard says, I quote him, "Art attracts us only by what it reveals of our most secret self," unquote. Though cinema is defined as art form, that is Gesamtkunst in nature, that means the get-together of many art forms, to which Arnheim said, this brought about the death of the film as an art form, as seen earlier. As Arnheim did not believe in choices, he says, a great artist has no choice. arbitrary choices exist only for mediocre artists. But is it true? That is the question. Next slide, please. Deleuze says that the visual ability is an ongoing narrative, is inbuilt in humans much before the films were made. He gives an example that though one sees a running man on the screen, suddenly it is cut off from that point. Our mind has the image building power that the man continues to run in our mind. The camera of the mind has already taken the visuals and starts building scenes even when stopped. The mind wants to complete the character. So he gives the analogy of water. The way water flows, our image building is a flow too. Once a movie is set in motion, like water, the flow continues. So for him, the movement on the screen leaves a powerful impact on the mind of the audience than the story itself. Next, please. Considering the above-mentioned ideas of the film theorists, Cavell, Stanley Cavell, another film theorist, had something specific to say, who also believes in film as realism. He says that his film, A World Complete Without Me, which is present to me, is the world of my immortality. And this is when I read it for the first time, I was completely moved by it. Bazin draws a line between pseudo-realism and true realism. And according to him, unfortunately, the medieval era in the realm of art could never recover from pseudo-realism, that which dealt with illusionary world. Well, how true it is, and it is highly debatable, but still. But according to Bazin, medieval era did not come across a technical development in art that brought about true realism. This is because of, according to Bazin, I quote him, perspective was the original sin of Western painting, unquote. He says this in Cinematic Realism. Next, please. Bazin continues in the same chapter, Cinematic Realism, I quote, in achieving the aims of Baroque art, photography has freed the plastic arts from their obsession with likeness. Painting was forced, as it turned out, to offer us illusion. And this illusion was reckoned sufficient unto art, photography and art, full stop, it is. Photography and the cinema, on the other hand, are discoveries that satisfy once for all and in its very essence, our obsession with realism, unquote. Next, please. Photographs may bring standstill element of space and time. Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Next slide, please. Photographs may bring standstill element of space and time in its authentic state. Bazin gives an analogy of an insect mummified in umber. But cinematic realism has its upper hand to photography. And that is, I quote, the film delivers Baroque art from its convulsive catalepsy. Now, for the first time, the image of things is likewise the image of their duration, change mummified as it were. Those categories of resemblance which determine the species photographic image likewise then determine the character of its aesthetic as distinct from that of painting, unquote. So is this existentialistic realism or realistic existentialism? That is the question. Reading Bazin, one feels that realism in cinema gives the knowledge of existence plus the essence, which other art forms apart from photography, like painting, sculpture, classical dance, and music may not do so. Again, this is highly debatable. From epistemic point of view, they do give knowledge, but it is knowledge of essence only. But the existence by itself is out of their framework, as existence is considered non-spiritual.
ma'am.
Hello? Yeah. But the existence by itself is out of their framework, as existence is considered non-spiritual, material, raw, and devoid of essence. But cinema as an art form gives the knowledge of the essence as well as existence. Bazin indeed is thankful to Muybridge, who created the image of a galloping horse as seen earlier while discussing Deleuze, and creating of cinematographic visuals. And rest is history. Murray Lumiere brothers, silent films, the talkies from black and white to Eastman color to technical color films, now the virtual reality, still a reality. Ultimately, the revolution in language of the screen is accepted. Next, please. So Bazin concludes, today, we can say that at last the director writes in film the image, its plastic composition, and the way it is set in time, because it is founded on a much higher degree of realism, has at its disposal more means of manipulating reality and of modifying it from within. The filmmaker is no longer the competitor of the painter and the playwright. He is at last the equal of the novelist. So the auteur theory, unquote. At this juncture, it is a high time to introduce the auteur theory and the author or authors selected for this paper. It is said that it takes a village to make a movie. Given the fact that filmmaking is inherently a joint venture with many participants, does it make sense to see just one or perhaps two individuals as the real creative source of the film? Those to whom we can trace all of the film's virtues and vices? This is the central issue posed by the question of whether films have authors. And the answer suggested by the auteur theory is that the director or directors is or are the controlling intelligence behind the making of a film. So auteur theory has its three basic existential questions related to it. Number one, the ontological. Who or what is responsible for the existence of a film? Two, the interpretive. The basic cooperative venture of film, should it be considered a single-handed one? Third, the evaluative. Who is responsible or what is responsible for a success and failure of a film? In connection to above-mentioned discussion, Cavell, in The World Viewed in his book, denies the natural connectivity or relation to movies. But he tries to establish a new philosophical connectivity to films in relation to ourselves and others. As he declared in The World Viewed, that it is not possible to think seriously about film apart from philosophy, and that philosophy cannot avoid the subject of film. Whereas Bazin talks of hardcore realism, Cavell, though accepts realism in films, but not representative realism, where a mysterious relationship is developed between film and objects and people in that film. This ontological difference he finds in a painting and film. Cavell writes in the chapter Cavell on Film, Television and Opera, I quote him, "Apart from the wish for selfhood, hence the always simultaneous granting of otherness as well, I do not understand the value of arts. The objects and persons projected on the movie screen are real. Yet they do not exist now." There is statement, film, a world complete without me, which is present to me, is the world of my immortality, as we had seen earlier, becomes relevant at this point. The faithful authors of the world cinema has reincarnated and manifested the takes of Bazin and Cavell in their films. Next, please. I have confined myself to some authorial directors, say Satyajit Ray, Aparna Sen, Deepa Mehta, Rainer Werner Fassbinder, and Michelangelo Antonioni, along with love, death, and vital role that is played in the selected films of these directors, that is authors, is a female or females. They may be present on the silver screen or absent, but the three main protagonists of this paper, indeed along with rebirth, counted now as part and parcel of death, love, death, and females, may not be in the same order, shows the immortality of this mortal life. Next one, yeah, it's the same one, let it be. The first author, that is Satyajit Ray from West Bengal, India, we know, and his Apu trilogy, Pather Panchali, A Song of the Little Road, Aparajito, The Unvanquished, and Apur Sansar, The World of Apu, is a landmark in world cinema. Pather Panchali deals with a small boy named Apu growing up with his sister Durga, meaning of the name, as we all know, Shakti, the eternal power, in a small village in West Bengal. The family comprises of mother, father, old cousin of Apu's father, the widowed aunt, and Durga as in Bengali. Durga's death devastates Apu, and it sees that love of Durga completes Apu's world. And death of Durga, the non-existence of Durga, portrays the complete relationship between Apu and Durga. In short, Durga and Apu share an intimate bond. They follow a candy seller whose wares they cannot afford, enjoy theatre, discover a train, and witness a major ceremony. They even face death of their aunt, Indir Thakurun. Durga is accused of a theft. She falls ill after a joyous dance in rains of the monsoon. On a stormy day, when Harihar, the father, is away on work, Durga dies. The story is based on Vibhuti Bandyopadhyay's 1929 Bengali novel, which created a stir in world cinema. The film placed Indian cinema and Indian filmmaker Ray at par with other world cinema's great authors of the time. The death of Apu's grandma, and especially his sister Durga, leaves a deep impact on Apu's psyche. So again, how important in all the three films, the females that he is having, the first film, the sister and aunt, the second one is mother, and the third one, wife. A second in Apu trilogy is Aparajito, which is a sequel to Pather Panchali by the same author. Next slide, please. Yeah, and it is by the same author, Vibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay. Aparajito depicts Apu as a young teenager boy who moves to Banaras with his father and mother. One morning, he confronts the death of his father, and Ray's depiction of Harihar's death signified on the screen, cut to a shot of a flock of pigeons flying off and whirling in the sky as if the soul of Harihar is freed from all the worldly chores that comprises of pains and sufferings. Apu's mother waits for Apu, who is studying in a city, but cannot frequently visit his mother. His mother, Sarbajaya, hallucinates that Apu is visiting her, comes out in the veranda one evening, sees the blanket of fireflies, and dies. According to Bazin, I quote, Aparajito was adapted like the Song of the Road from Bengali novel by Vibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay. Song of the Road was the first novel written by the author to be published in 1929. It was followed by 1932 by the sequel Aparajito, itself influenced by Maxime Gorky and Romain Rolland, consequently written in the grand international tradition of socialist fiction. This picture is almost impossible to summarize, for its narrative is dreamy, relaxed, and highly subjective, unquote. Though not on the screen, the death of his mother is another pain intrinsically felt by Apu. Pigeons flying and fireflies in the dark night of this dark night on the night of his mother's death are sort of metaphors Ray uses in his film to show the release of the soul from this dark world and achievement of enlightenment of the soul of Apu's father and mother, respectively. Next one. The third in the series of Apur Sansar is Apur Sansar, the world of Apu. An adult Apu, by default, getting married to a friend's cousin, Aparna, and her death during child delivery leaves Apu fragmented. Living a life of a recluse seems to be a life of an ascetic, where in the end he is united with his son. So says Ray, I quote Ray, Apur Sansar thus grew out of situations conceived by the author himself. I, as the interpreter, through the film medium, exercised my right to select, modify, and arrange. This is a right which every filmmaker who aspires to more than doing a commercial chore to artistic endeavor, in fact, possesses, unquote. Next one. All important women in Apu's life leaves him forlorn, and that has deep impact on his psyche. Next one, please. Also realizing the worthlessness of life. But the element of love plays a pivotal role in his life, especially in the end when he is united with his son. Love and death are central to Apu trilogy. And though Apu being at central point, we find the women in his life keep him in the center. Ontologically speaking, if not love, death, and women in Apu's life, Apu cannot be thought of as an existential being. Next one. Coming to Aparna Sen, another Bengali director from India, who have list of films to her credit. Those have strong women protagonists. Her film 36 Chaurangi Lane revolves around a school teacher who enjoys teaching Shakespeare, but most of her students are least interested in what she is teaching. Her brother is in a nursing home, quite in a psychotic state. Her only biological connection, her niece, now gets married and lives abroad. To say her own, there is no one, except for a cat called Sir Toby. Fascinating name this is. Her former student and her boyfriend befriend her and use her apartment for writing his novel, but the place also becomes their rendezvous spot. After their marriage, they leave her and deceive her to keep her away from Christmas party, which they find it as a burden that she is over there. She realizes that she was just used when she visits their place without informing them. In the end, alone on the street, she recites from King Lear with no audience except for a roadside dog. Next slide. This is highly well-crafted film by Sen. Miss Violet Stoneham, the teacher, was in love when she was young, and the boyfriend gets killed in a war. Also, her brother's death breaks her completely. The dream sequence, though being surrealistic, is actually taking us through levels of existence mentioned by Soren Kierkegaard, the aesthetic, the ethical, and the religious. The lovers, her student and her boyfriend, and her own boyfriend, her love for her boyfriend, seems that for student Nandita is only living at aesthetic level, while Miss Violet Stoneham the main protagonist of the film, the teacher, moves from the aesthetics to ethical to religious level by a leap of faith, in Kierkegaard's terminology. The ascending moment is shown by her love for Shakespeare and readings from Shakespeare. According to Richard Burt in the chapter, All That Remains of Shakespeare in Indian Films, I quote from there, 36 Chowringhee Lane is not strictly a play within a film, but involves reading from Twelfth Night and King Lear in performative scenes. My interest in 36 Chowringhee Lane as a Shakespearean play within the Indian film is in using the genre to understanding how Shakespeare functions as a vanishing mediator when disseminated internationally and transnationally on film, unquote. And I found, instead of King Lear, here you find Miss Violet Stoneham. So again, a woman at the center and can be at par with male. Therefore, Shakespeare is used in such profound manner that the concepts of love, death, and beingness of a female is brought on a screen with absolutely subtle moral concern. According to Vimal Disnayake, I quote him, the film portrays the plight of a lonely woman in a society that cares little for questions of female subjectivity and self-fulfillment, unquote. Third film, Fire, next slide please, by Indo-Canadian film director Deepa Mehta, in a way glorifies love and femininity, in fact gender and preferential sexuality, and sexual love's journey to spiritual and mystical love relationship. First of its kind in Indian cinema, homosexuality was taken as a theme, that to lesbians in love. But are they actually lesbians or inventors? Radha and Sita, names also of Hindu goddesses, are caught up with typical joint family where both their husbands, one living a monastic life and the other having extramarital affair. The women discover the love between them and plunge in the ocean of discover and rediscover love for each other. Ultimately, leaving the family, they move out of the house to widen their horizon of love. Next one. The sensual love is only an instrument to move towards unending horizon of love and also of discovery. It's not the mirage that they are pursuing, but actual, real with R capital, love. Deepa Mehta has done a fantabulous job of glorifying love prima facie and femininity. This reminds of Susan Langer of giving analogy of dream for film. According to Daniel Frampton, I quote him, in her 1953 essay, A Note on the Film, Susan Langer realizes that film is free from spatial and temporal restrictions and quotes approvingly from R.E. Jones' 1941 book, The Dramatic Imagination, motion pictures are our thoughts made visible and audible. The flow in a swift succession of images precisely as our thoughts do, and their speed with their flashbacks, like sudden uprushes of memory, and their abrupt transition from one subject to another approximates very closely the speed of our thinking. They have the rhythm of the thought stream and the uncanny ability to move forward or backward in space or time. They project pure thought, pure dream, pure inner life, unquote. This pure inner life that Sita and Radha explore is taboo to the outside world of theirs. But for them, the becomingness is more important than being. Next one. This existential viewpoint is also clearly seen in Rainer Werner Fassbinder's film, The Marriage of Maria Braun. Next one, please. Though Susan Langer speaks cinema as dream, it reminds me of importance of the real moving to the real, which is reflected in Bazin and Cavell's philosophy. The Marriage of Maria Braun had put German cinema on the new pedestal in world cinema. The story is about Maria Brown, who marries to a soldier Herman Brown in cannot be imagined situation. But Herman has to go on the battlefront in World War II. Maria, like survival of the fittest, accepts the reality and becomes the mistress of a wealthy industrialist. But up to the end, Maria remains faithful to Herman. But when the time comes when Maria can finally be united to Herman, she dies of an explosion of gas, which she had by mistake kept on to light her cigarette. Fassbinder brings surrealist story to real life, and as mentioned earlier, that the mysteries of facts are stranger than absolute reality. It seems in the movie that demolished Germany on the way to prosperity and so-called rapid progress frustrates and retards the love between Maria and Herman. Also, the film from the beginning to the end shows how Maria grows as a woman, a self-confident, self-reliant and self-motivated individual, though she meets the end disastrously. But Fassbinder, as a true author, takes one to unbelievable circumstances to hardcore reality, which seems to be mysterious and mystical. In the climax, the audience can at best do is "oh." According to Derek Malcolm, I quote him, that is Fassbinder's movies are generally about the oppressor and the oppressed. But the marriage of Maria Brown was less about Hollywood's familiar idea of redeeming nature of love than the fact that love is often the worst oppressor of all. In Fassbinder's own life, as in his art, that was certainly true, unquote. Next, please. As a true author, Fassbinder makes the audience realize the hard reality as against sentimental idealism of 19th century German Romanticism. According to Ruben, I quote him, as a filmmaker, he saw his task to be the awakening of his middle-class audience to the destructive implications of their own unexamined values. By the time he made Maria Brown, Fassbinder had found the means to engage his audience with such material without openly attacking their values. This development helps to explain the popular success the film enjoyed, unquote. Next one. Coming to the last film of this paper, La Ventura, directed by Italian director Michelangelo Antonioni. The film was made in 1960. This film revolves around the character Anna, who is missing on an island in the Mediterranean when a group of rich Italians are on a yachting trip. Sandro, who is a boyfriend of Anna, and Claudia, who is close friend of Anna, start extensive search for Anna. They get attracted and love of Sandro switches towards Claudia, who up to the end is in dilemma that how fast people change, and she herself also is scared about losing Sandro if Anna is found. Has Anna committed suicide? No, it seems, as Anna's father discovers that she was reading a novel, but also a Bible. Also Bible. Then where is she? She has disappeared. But in the search, Claudia seems to go on an endless journey of discovering and rediscovering herself. Antonioni may seem to be a formalist filmmaker, especially with regard to this film. But I find him a thorough author who presents reality in highly mystical way. And this realism versus mysticism is completely dissolved as life seems to be like this. As mentioned by Peter Brunet, next please. I quote Peter Brunet, Antonioni himself has said that he began making film in this manner in order to rid myself of much unnecessary technical narrative, eliminating all the logical narrative transitions, all those connective that followed. The reason I did this was because it seemed to me, and of this I am firmly convinced, that cinema today should be tied to the truth rather than to logic, unquote. So love, death, in this case disappearance, and the female hood constantly takes the audience on a roller coaster ride of emotional dwellings. I was confused while watching the film at whose side am I? Meta-ethically speaking, or existential ethically? Anna, Claudia, Sandro, or it was the unconventional way the film was shot and that came on the screen. In the review of this film, Roger Ebert says, I quote him, "Tell me you love me, I love you. Tell me you don't, I don't love you." By the time this exchange takes place, deep inside Michelangelo Antonioni's La Ventura, the conversation has nothing to do with love. It is more like an attempt to pass the time, like a game of solitaire or flipping a coin. There is not even the possibility that the characters are in love, can love, have loved, will love. Too shallow to be truly lonely. Pauline Kael wrote, "They are people trying to escape their boredom by reaching out to one another and finding only boredom once again," unquote. So overall, the marriage of Maria Brown, 36 Chowringhee Lane and Fire, La Ventura, shows the bourgeoisie mentality and especially the adventure of discovering loneliness in a love relationship. But discovering femalehood remains at the center. Next one. In conclusion, I would like to say, along with love and death, the vital role that is played in these in these films is a female or females. They may be present on the silver screen or absent, but the three protagonists, love, death, and females, maybe not in the same order, shows the immortality of this mortal life. In Apu trilogy, the death of females who occupied a prominent place in Apu's life. In 36 Chowringhee Lane, love denied to Miss Violet Stoneham, and isolation and loneliness brings forth to her the realization of harsh reality of life by intervention of Shakespeare's King Lear. In Fire, the female protagonists Radha and Sita climbs the ladder of life to seek a view of love in all its aspects. In the marriage of Maria Brown, Maria discovers that she can love up to the end of his life, and in La Ventura, Claudia is trying to understand different types and layers of love and relationship. These films have been potent enough to scream loud the feeling of love, death, and its femalehood. And this is due to the true authorial behavior of the directors, those who have been complete faithful auteurs. Next slide, please. Next one. You can go to the reference later. The cinema substitutes for our gaze a world more in harmony with our desires, says André Bazin. Thank you very much.
Dear Dr. Amita ma'am,
Yeah.
It was a very wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
We have enjoyed the lecture. Before we go to the question and answer session, I request Dr. S. Ananthakrishnan, the head of the Department of History, AIM College, to make a general comment on your talk. Sir, please.
Hello.
Ma'am, I was just trying the silent era by praising you. I hope you could read my lips.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
No, I'll just now come. Dr. Amita Valmiki just took this whole theoretical perspective on cinematic realism, feminist perspective to a real height by theorizing the various concepts of three most important things of love, death, and female good, female Good.
Yeah, femalehood. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like for some of my boys who are here, I would just like to say that சினிமாவில் யதார்த்தவாதத்தின் பெண்மை முன்னோக்கம் எவ்வாறு இருந்தது என்பதை மேடம் இப்ப பேசினாங்க. அவங்க கூறுகையில் ஒரு 5 பெரிய லெக்சர் சினிமா இவர்களை எடுத்து ஆராய்ந்தார்கள். ஒன்று வந்து சத்யஜித் ரே, இரண்டாவது வந்து அபர்ணா சென், மூன்றாவது வந்து தீபா மேத்தா, அதுக்கப்புறம் மைக்கேல் ஆஞ்சலோ ஆண்டோனியோ. அண்ட் இது தவிர அவர்கள் வந்து ஒரு சினிமாவுக்கு எவ்வாறு ஒரு பிலாசபி என்பது இருக்கிறது, இந்த பிலாசபியில 3 கான்செப்டை, அதாவது காதல் அல்லது பற்று மற்றும் மரணம் அண்ட் ஒரு பெண்மை, ஒரு மனித, இந்த அனைத்து சினிமாவில் எவ்வாறு பெண்மை என்பதை வெளிப்படுத்தினார்கள். மிகவும் அற்புதமாக பேசினார்கள். நீங்களும் எங்க தமிழ் சினிமா பார்க்கும் பொழுது இந்த பெண்மைத்தனம் எவ்வாறு நாம் அதை வெளிப்படுத்துகிறோம் என்பதை மிகவும் அற்புதமாக நாம் காண்கிறோம். நான் மீண்டும் ஆங்கிலத்துக்கு வருகிறேன். ஓகே மேம், I was just trying to analyze this I've led a little bit of the Frankfurt School, and I would just like to ask you about this Adorno, his concept of ontology and empiricism. What is your particular view on that, ma'am?
Amita ma'am, would you like to respond to the question? Are you there, ma'am?
Yeah. Yes, I was speaking. I forgot to unmute myself. Sorry.
Yeah.
I said that I have not done an elaborate research on Adorno's view. I have confined myself more to Bazin and to Cavell, and they fascinate me very much and highly intriguing, because they are not just talking about the physical reality as such. They are not they are transgressing through physicality. They are moving towards. So it is more, I feel, towards Kierkegaard. The way he's moving from one stage to another, taking help, of course, and nowhere he's giving up the aesthetics. Even when you are at the religious level. I hope you understand this point.
Yes.
So unfortunately, I have not done the detailed Adorno's take over this particular concept.
Yeah, because of the
but you can tell me. Yeah, please.
No, I mean, I wouldn't talk about Adorno at this particular point of time, because coming back to Satyajit Ray, I've seen all the Appu trilogy. I'm a great fan of him. And some of the 2 master books which are written in Tamil film, one is Theodore Bhaskaran on the silent era, and you must have heard of MSS Pandian, the image trap on MGR. Those 2 books really throw you that how these traps set on male personalities are not able to move. But coming back to Satyajit Ray, when we are talking about, Satyajit Ray, they said that he got all his awards more on, showing the poverty of India than more on feminism. That is one of those things that they talk on. This is the little thing which I know about it, but it's brilliant the way you analyze, ma'am, on Aparna Sen and Deepa May. I think I like the way how you took the mystery of facts are stranger than fiction, and how you beautifully converted it to mystery of facts are stranger than absolute reality. Oh, that is a master statement of this talk. The fiction becomes master reality, and we all know, and it's really superb. So I just wanted to just congratulate you on this brilliant talk, and I hope you enjoyed presenting to all of us. And I would say the Department of Philosophy and all of us are extremely lucky to listen to you, ma'am. And before I throw this floor open for questions from many of our students and the public at large. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Yeah. In fact, I wanted to comment on your this thing that he got more awards on showing India's poverty. In fact, it is other way around, that he is criticized, that he is even poor people in his film are shown very elite. They are glorified. In fact, all his characters, may it be in Charulata, who are a very affluent family,
Yeah.
or maybe Jalsaghar, for example, that he comes down, but again he remains very, very dignified and elite. And at the same time, you see Apu in his transition from poverty to the level where he can survive, as a forest officer or something like that. But still, he remains very elite throughout, you find. Each character, and Ray has been always criticized for that he's not popularizing or making movies on poverty or displaying poverty of India, but displaying more of the elite culture. And therefore, there was a tussle between, if you know, about Mrinal Sen, between Mrinal Sen and and Satyajit Ray. This was the problem.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
S. Ananthakrishnan and Amita ma'am. Now
Yeah.
the floor is open for discussion. If somebody wants to ask any questions, they can post the questions in the chat box. Even they can unmute themselves and can directly ask the question to the speaker. Meanwhile, ma'am, there are some comments in the chat box.
Yeah.
One comment by Madhumita Guha. In the current situation, this can be made a mode of motivation to learners in the new normal way of teaching and learning.
Yeah.
So, would you like to comment on
Yeah, I want to say that, Madhumita ji, hello, how are you? I wanted to say that, in fact, in our college, since it is gone autonomous from last 3 years, what we have done in philosophy department, along with certain texts for every topic, we have introduced film also as a text. So for each topic, for in FY, SY and TY class, we have film as a text also. So from next year, it is not only going to be a certain, they have to visit library, but they also have to see films as a text, which will make things very clear. All the topics will be made very clear for them. Therefore, I think, as she says, that a new normal way of, we can start with this teaching learning, process. Madhumita ji, what we have done is we are introducing film as text for each topic. And we have invited Dr. Biraj Mehta Rathi, who is also a teacher in Wilson College of Philosophy and also an expert in film and philosophy. She is also going to contribute in this. So this is my comment on Madhumita ji's, gesture.
Thank you so much,
I
ma'am.
can probably add is that if you're going to analyze the character of Rajini and have a philosophy, I think our classes will be full.
Yeah, but I'm going to, first of all, we have introduced already in TY class that what is good cinema. So Andrei Tarkovsky speaks about these days cinema is in a very, very bad shape because it has to sell, then it is a good film. A good film is always that which sells, and that which doesn't sell is a bad film. So we have to rethink and revisit and redefine. And first thing that we introduce to our student is to what is good cinema and bad cinema.
Yeah, that's very good. Like, for example, studying about Ariko Kurosawa, and then especially having this amazing movie. These are the times when we have started with Prasanna analyzing a movie called Parasite.
Yes,
I mean, Parasite. It just breaks all
the barriers.
Yes, barriers
looking
and
at one way.
Selfish. I think it's classic. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Classic. It was, and I was very much moved by this. Though certain aspects I wanted it to be modified. Okay, if I would be directing the film, how I would have done it, and but it was amazing. I was like spellbound. When I came out of the theater, I was still zapped completely. Yes. Yeah. Anybody else?
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Participants are encouraged. If anybody wants to ask questions, they can
Or even
unmute
comments.
themselves. Yeah, they can comment. If anybody wants to make comments, also, please you can make your comments by unmuting yourself.
And Dr. Prasanna, you too.
Yeah. Meanwhile, maybe like I'll put a question.
Yeah.
It was very nice listening to you, ma'am. But maybe my question is from a different perspective. Like I would like to know how do you look at the concept of male gaze from a female, like a feminist perspective? Male gaze that it appears in cinema.
Yeah. So there are people who are trying to overthrow this, and they are thinking very seriously. There are film critics and film theorists who are. But I was very happy to learn that some of the so-called superstar females, in Hollywood, in Bollywood, for example, they have asked that we need to have same pay as the male protagonist or a hero in the film, and we don't want to be paid less because we are doing equally an important job. So I found that statement by Kareena Kapoor or many other females who spoke aloud, and the newspaper tabloids, they were mentioning this, that they should be paid equally. And I think there are sincere and serious filmmakers also nowadays who are doing their job properly and not showing this kind of, using females as commodity. So film like Masan, for example, or a film like Newton, or film like Aligarh, for example, you don't see such things. So we have to encourage filmmakers. Unfortunately, these films are made less. And as I told you, Tarkovsky, who's saying that it is a very difficult time that we are going through. First of all, filmmaking itself is so expensive, and then you have to sell. So females are always supported as commodity, and there such kind of films like by Ray, who made so many years back these films, but where females are nowhere portrayed less than, or maybe females are actually commanding all over. For example, the film Kanchenjunga. One of the film of Ray's, which was absolutely path-breaking. And how a female, though the male's counterpart are there, but how rich the female heritage is. So this has been done, and commodification of women, of course, has to be stopped. So we have to see that very much. Anybody else? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, ma'am, you are audible. Huh?
I'm audible. Yeah, I have finished with.
Madam, can I just ask you some of the questions?
Yeah, please. Hello?
Yeah, ma'am.
I can't hear.
Ma'am, there are some of the
Yeah.
questions in the chat box. Can I put it to you now?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, one of the questions, it says that Netflix, for the matter, presented good female agency wherein the housemaid's career and choice of partner was demonstrated. This is from Aparna Verma.
Yeah, Netflix, for that matter, presented good female agency wherein the housemaid's career and choice of partner was demonstrated. Okay, I have not seen that because excuse me, I'm very bad at certain technical things. I see feature films more, and I have no Netflix, uploaded. So I have not seen the film, but okay, Netflix does this. I would love to see, because so many of my friends
Okay.
recommended me that you put up Netflix.
Oh, she's replied, that's okay. So let me.
What is your view on the excess violence and bloodshed portrayed in films as an analyst?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think, we have to make our viewers mature enough. We have to produce good cinema wherever things are necessary, and the cinematic freedom, for example, people need to have. Now, see, for example, when I see Bergman's movie, there is no absolute so-called explicit violence on the film, but maybe I feel very violent certain times. Bergman's film, that I feel like hitting my own self, because it is so suppressed. The id, for example, id is superego, and ego, that the concept of Freudian psychoanalysis, and the id bursts out in me when I see Bergman's movies, for example. So we have to cultivate, we have to make them understand that wherever the bloodshed, for example, when I saw Black Friday, and there was too much of violence, but that was needed, or maybe Gangs of Wazipur, for example. So we need to cultivate this culture that you have to view film as a film. It's an art form, and not a documentary, or not even not a docu-feature. So it is more of showing you there is a necessity of, it has an aesthetic element. Probably I'm not enjoying that, but I'm enjoying the part of how that scene is being shot. So it depends on cinematography. It is depending on the cinema as a artwork that you have to see, and wherever it is necessary, it should be there. And one has to keep distance and to see the film. Otherwise, you are not able to understand a film as an art form. So it has an impact on us. The bloodshed, too explicit, is, of course, we cannot take children around with us. So these movies should be seen after a certain age only, and this has to be. It is a very important aspect. That is what I feel. But yeah, as you said, explicit bloodshed, which is irrelevant, should not be portrayed at all in the films. Did I satisfy Mr. Swaminathan?
How about the majority of movies? They are impacting more on our emotions rather than intelligence, because majority of movies, they are very rarely impacting on our intelligence.
Yeah.
They are just touching to emotions and emotions only, and that thereby it creates some misinterpretation of the entire story and all. See, because general viewer, their emotions are already suppressed, and some kind of movies, they just give some spark in that emotions.
Yeah.
So generally, certain movies, when they make, they must think about that how to boost some intelligence of the ordinary viewer.
Absolutely. Yeah, Professor Asher, the problem is that the whole culture of seeing film, discussing about cinema, we don't have these from the grassroots level. We don't have this, and this is a major problem, I think. And because of that, those which are emotionally affecting us, and they are also creating problems in society. after seeing the movies. This is something very horrifying. In fact, it is very horrifying. So the whole culture of seeing films as an art form is not developed. And especially visual arts, for example. In a country like India, visual art is I think, very underrated and underestimated. How many of us, take our children to art galleries or museums? This is another problem. And television has created big problem in a way, I feel, because the way they produce, and you have nothing else to get entertained. So without using any kind of intelligence, you just switch on, and whatever is given to you, it is you become you become a victim of it, and you go on seeing that. So where you have to keep a check and where you have to go for it, this culture has to be built in. And I think educational institutions play a very pivotal role in this. And so I think the whole teaching community or teachers community has to be, first of all, to be graduated in how to watch cinema, and how to inspire others to watch cinema in the true sense of the term. This culture is not developed. So we have to work on it, and we have to figure it out how we should do it.
Thank you so much for you. You already take a stepping stone for that, and you did a little lead, and we all are with you only. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. Making a small attempt.
Thank you, sir, for your intervention. And we have some more questions. Siddhant Naik has asked a question. You spoke of existentialism during your presentation. Can we say that some films can be used to represent a way to illustrate the human condition? Are films and existentialism interdisciplinary?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Bazin, and you find, for example, Francois Truffaut, Andrew Saris, Jean-Luc Godard, all of these were working almost like a well-knit unit. And they were highly influenced by these. And when you see films by Godard or by Fassbinder or by Bergman, these elements are constantly being reflected. So there is a complete interdisciplinary, between films and existentialism. And to tell you, I have a bias, I have my prejudices, that I love films which are based on existential philosophy very much. And my take on cinema is mainly on that. So I love films which are completely related to the existential philosophy. For example, Sartre, you find this together. They were all together. And even the world of, in France, for example, and Spain, painters came together. And they also did paintings of that sort. So all existential crises they were portraying. So many art forms came together at that time. And many artists from different art forms, they came together, and they were related to philosophy of existentialism. Yeah, anybody else?
Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll wait if there are any more questions. Meanwhile, I'll request all the participants to feedback. I'll request all the participants to submit the feedback form. Upon submitting the feedback form, you will be receiving an e-certificate. Thank you for joining with us.
And I think Madhumita madam has asked, madam, what about your opinion for the film Manthan? I loved Manthan very much, but of Shyam Benegal, for example, by Girish Karnad. Manthan was made by Shyam Benegal, not Girish Karnad. Girish Karnad was a lead in Manthan, and I enjoyed the film. But of Shyam Benegal, I enjoyed more Ankur. The best was Ankur. Later on, in the genre cult, where he produced Kali Yuga with Shashi Kapoor in Film Wala's production, that was also one of the very fine movie. But even Nishant I enjoyed very much. Bhumika was one film where I was completely, as I told you, spellbound. The existential crisis of Hansa Vadkar, the biopic on Hansa Vadkar, the film actress from Maharashtra. Excellent movie. Manthan was, of course, very good, no doubt about it. It was shot in my village where I come from, and I liked it very much. It was very good film. Though more than Manthan, I found Ankur the best because you use too many elements, it deteriorates the essence of the film, I feel. If you make it more simple, then it is more very good. The less material that you use, the less because film is all about that, because you don't have to put a lot of literature, you don't have to put a lot of props and etc. The more simplified, the more existential crisis is revealed. That is what I felt. That is what I feel.
I think there is one more question, ma'am.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on movie based on corruption? Ankush.
Yeah. Which movies based on corruption?
Yeah.
That's all.
What is your opinion on movie based on corruption? Ankush.
Ankush. Yeah. I remember that was Nana Patekar, if I'm not wrong. Yes. A very nice movie. Still, as I told you, that you require, sometimes it happens that the producers also demand that the film has to sell. So you need to have some songs, you need to have some female over there, and you need to show how much of atyachar or how much of she has to tolerate, and then there comes a male who is trying to protect her. So Ankush was very good, but I felt that can the females take a stand of her own? So when such kind of films come, it affects me more rather than just some male goes on protecting female. And as I told you, that they could have made it in a more artistic manner, the film. It was more I think Ankush was because of good actors. The film was good because of the actors. Films like the films made by Ray or Adur Gopalakrishnan or Gautam Ghosh or Hansal Mehta, I think they do it more in a refined manner, in a more beautiful manner, I feel, rather than just documenting certain things in a very fast manner. You need to take some time while you are preparing a film. You can't produce a film very fast. And the locale which was used, the background which was used in Ankush was not very well thought of, I thought. And even some of the actors' choice was not at par with Nana Patekar in the lead. So it was a good movie, but it was not a very good movie, I felt. They could have made it. I have seen many times Ankush. I liked it for the first time when I saw, but when I went on seeing it, they did not have certain songs, and even the songs were not potent enough. When you see Ardha Satya, for example, then you find it was much refined. Yes. Anybody else? Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
I think we'll be able to continue this discussion as long as possible, because it's on cinema and you're there to explain things. But
Thank you so much.
We all have time limits. So for the time being, maybe we will stop the discussions here, and we are looking forward to have many more discussions like this in future. So we'll move on to the last part of the lecture. So let me propose vote of thanks. Myself, Prasanna Kumari M, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Agatsan Manmal Jain College. So first of all, let me thank the ICPR authorities for granting us the ICPR Lecture Series 2021. I thank ICPR and all the authorities on the behalf of the Department of Philosophy, Agatsan Manmal Jain College. I thank the speaker, Dr. Amita Valmiki. Even within a very short time period, she said yes to our request. And it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, ma'am. Philosophy and film is a subject which we are hearing for some time, but philosophy departments are slowly adapting to it, and some departments are having seminars and on. So I hope that philosophy and film will flourish, and there'll be a lot more studies in this area, not only about the Western classics, but about Indian cinema, and from different perspectives, film can be viewed from cultural side. And in Madras University, I know that like people are trying to analyze film from neuroaesthetic perspectives and all. So that's a very wonderful move. Thank you so much for introducing this topic to our students, and I hope your talk is recorded and it will be uploaded in the YouTube, so that can be used as a resource material for students. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining with us.
I hope I have done justice to the topic, and I have not disappointed you.
You have done more than justice, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining with us. Now, I would like to thank our secretary and associate secretary for the encouragement and support you have shown to the Department of Philosophy. And now I would like to extend my sincere thanks to our principal, Dr. N. Venkatramanan, who is very energetic and who was here for some time, and he didn't want to disturb the talk. So he was there with us. So thank you so much, sir, for all the encouragement. And now I like to express my sincere thanks to Dr. Mahavir, who is the vice principal of the college, for his encouragement and support. Now I thank all the heads of the department who have encouraged us to have the talk, and all the staff who have encouraged us and also who have attended the webinar. I also thank all the students who have participated enthusiastically. Thank you so much, all the students. And I thank all the participants from different parts of the country. I hope that there are some colleagues of Amita ma'am who have joined from Mumbai, and some other parts of the country. Thank you so much for joining with us. I thank Dr. S. Ananthakrishnan for his valuable presence in our lecture. And I thank the one and only, the pillar of our strength, our HOD, Dr. S. Manikandan, for being with us, and my colleague, Professor Sumitra, for being with us. I thank all the office staff members, especially Superintendent Ravichandran, for being with us and giving us all the support. Also, all the staff members of Shift 1 and Shift 2 office. Also, the manager Shift 2, Sankita Rajappa, for their support and help. I also thank the technical support from the computer science department, especially Professor Marbin, for all their support, and all the other staff for their support. Thank you so much for being with us, and we are looking forward to have many more lectures like this. Thank you so much once again. And we have put the feedback link in the chat box, so you can fill the feedback link and you will receive an e-certificate. Thank you for being with us. We have another lecture tomorrow that will be delivered by Professor S. Paneerselvam. So looking forward to that lecture, and I hope that you all will be able to join tomorrow also. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye. Bye, Prasanna.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.